everybody watching, and welcome to the School of Hard Knocks. My name is Equinox, previously of the guild Everything Purple and briefly Salt Miners Union, and today I will be teaching you how to play your class, if you're a Necromancer, and if you GvG, because I'm not esports enough for WTS. So for anyone unfamiliar, this video series is basically my attempt at helping the GvG scene. People submit their gameplay footage to me. I then review, edit, and upload that footage onto YouTube for everybody, including the people that submitted it, but mostly for everybody in the GvG scene to refer to and hopefully to benefit from. If you want any more information regarding that, I have all relevant links in the description below, so I encourage you to go read the description and click on any links that that you want to or need to. Furthermore, before we get into this, I just want to remind and encourage everyone to please post constructively in the comments below. Obviously, not all the gameplay we see on this channel is going to be perfect. Some of it won't even be good. Some of it will be bad. But the point of this is for people to apply new information and to improve. So even if these players are bad now, as long as they apply themselves, they can very easily be good at their class. This is a resource that everyone can benefit from, and it's in everybody's interest to be respectful of these people who were kind enough and brave enough. I know it's a little exaggerated saying brave there, but still the point applies, to post their footage publicly, to be critiqued, and to have everybody watch that. So, I hope you all enjoy, and please continue watching. Alright, so let's dive right into this Necromancer gameplay. So we're starting off with, I believe this is Shine from BMO submitting his footage. Right at the start of the fight, he goes with a Reaper's Mark on the Ellie, which is pretty good. This is one of about 3 different situations where Reaper's Mark can be effective to deny a forward static from an Ellie. He doesn't accomplish that here, but it is still a effective use of the Reaper's Mark, as opposed to trying to use it on the enemy melee's first push when they still already have stability. So, good there. His positioning up ahead right here is confusing for a lot of people, I think, and you probably have a lot of questions about this. So I made a diagram here so you can get associated with various safe zones that you can identify as BMO is moving from their spawn point where they're empowering all the way up the right side into the enemy spawn, and continue to reference these while I talk. As you can see with the 5 different areas, they will adjust. I'm going to stop periodically as the driver is moving, and you'll see how these areas change. So as you get to the point right here where they are deep into the enemy spawn, the driver's leaping into their stack, there is no longer a protected zone, because you are extremely exposed out here, and if the driver decides to regroup, it will not be towards you, it will be towards their spawn by pushing through their melee and getting to a more logical area, to be honest. But still, that's the best position he could be in. And as he continues running ahead, you see that what he's going to do is he's going to he's going to beeline straight from where he is to his front line to try and regroup with him, with them rather. But in this situation, I think the best option for him would be to move around and rotate around the right side and sort of hug the edge of the arena to regroup behind his melee and get to the next regroup. If he takes any damage from any of these red names in front of him as he's rotating to the right, he would be able to recover in the regroup. But the worst thing that he can do right now is to make a beeline to his melee, because they're going to start laying down damage following on that melee, which they do here. As you can see, circles start going down, can't really tell what they are. He starts to focus on an Ellie, which he stays right in melee range of, which is not a good thing to do right now because it is the start of the fight. Everyone still has their cooldowns, everyone has their health and their might stacks and all of that stuff. So it's really not a smart position to try and point blank cleave a downstate Ellie in this case. And as you see, all these circles are going down. Most likely Wells, could be something else. I don't know because he has the effect LOD turned on. But you can see his health has just dropped down from full down to 8,000, and it will go down to somewhere in the 7,000s, I believe, here. Interrupts his own heal, which is not good, but that was definitely not the most ideal position he could have taken. He doesn't stick around for the regroup heal, which is not great. Now, here is something I want to highlight as well. So, as you see, he turns around, he still has the Ellie targeted, and he moves in for a Tainted Shackles and presumably a life transfer afterwards. This is not advisable. At the start of each fight, Tainted Shackles and life transfer are not as effective as Life Blast by any means. On the one hand, not only does Tainted Shackles and Life Transfer have a 600 range, which forces you into a very risky position at the start of the fight, when, again, enemies still have all their cooldowns. They can easily regen the damage, they can clear the immob, a lot of what you're using with that combination of skills is very inconsequential to an enemy melee in the early game. And against a experienced guild with skilled necros and skilled gank, they will target you out, and they will hopefully down you very quickly if you put yourself into a risky position using those skills. And in general, it is a lot more effective to Life Blast. Not only would you be putting yourself in a safe range, but the DPS is a lot higher on Life Blast, and when there's still 20 of them remaining and you haven't actually generated any dead players yet, they're still very clumped up, especially on a downstate. If there's a downstate and they're trying to power res, which, well, I guess they didn't power res, they actually banned it, but they did clump up around it. You would still be getting that piercing Life Blast cleave onto them, and you'd be still doing a lot of damage, if not more damage, because it is, in the early game of GvGs, it is a lot more focused around single targets to try and generate a downstate that you can punish on for the enemy. So, definitely not a good thing that he tried to go for the Tainted Shackle life transfer. However, he runs in as we keep going. He does the life transfer, but he basically just ends up wasting the skills. He already wasted the Tainted Shackles because there was no enemies. There weren't any enemies around him when he activated, so it was a totally waste there. Then he moved in and started using the life transfer, but then realized, okay, well, these red circles are starting to pop up, so I'm probably not in a good position, so I might as well just drop out of Death Shroud and walk away. And so that's what he does, which isn't exactly advisable either. But it is good that he didn't try to stay within 600 range to keep using that life transfer at the very least. And now he pops the Lich, which is good. This is actually not a bad Lich. So because they had that downed Ellie generated, and because that Ellie on top of that misted over into their stack, which basically forced the enemy to hesitate because of that vapor form on the Ellie, it gave his melee a perfect opportunity to fully regroup. If you saw up in the upper left-hand corner rather, they had full 25 stacks of might pushing in on the downed Ellie, and so they got a lot of damage from the melee onto that downed Ellie. Well, not just the downed Ellie, but everyone clumped up around it. So their melee was fully on the retreat, and they took quite a bit of damage. So he does pop this Lich here. Generally, I like to pop Liches on downstates since the number one can be a little unreliable at times. But he does pop the Lich. I think he kills this flame turret over here, which is fantastic, by the way. But the other Lich generates it down, and they both start cleaving him out with the number one. I'm not sure why he went for the jagged horror mark. Definitely not advisable. But they do cleave the guy out anyway. He drops the Lich, heals himself up, and what happens next is very, very bad. And I want to highlight this because he just sort of wades around for several seconds up here in the back line, doing nothing at all. So this is don't feel too bad about this, Necro, but this is and I think I definitely covered this with them when we did the Necro workshop. So I think you already heard this from me once, but Necromancer is a class that is 100% offensive. Nothing about the Necromancer says, oh, this is so that I can survive and get away because I have Mistform and Armor of Earth and Lightning Flash. No, Necromancer is 100% offensive. It has no gap closers. It has no, well, I mean, it has some stealth stab, but it doesn't have a very reliable self stab because it doesn't have anything that stun breaks and gives stab, like an Armor of Earth or a Balance Stance or anything. You can only stun break and then stab. But in general, you get the idea. And most of your utilities are dedicated to having more damage because you have to have 2 wells, and then beyond that you can get a 3rd utility for survivability. But obviously he's taking Corrupt Boon, which is pretty meta at this point. Necromancer is generally a class that positions well in order to survive, and that is really the only thing that is required of you as a necro, is to position yourself well. That is your job. Position in such a way that you do not die and that you are constantly dealing out damage and condition pressure to the enemy, because your class is a high risk, high reward style of class. You are supposed to be aggressive. That is your role. That is your job. That is what you are expected of. So anytime that you could be dealing out pressure, that's what you should be doing. So here, what he should have done is moved up to about 900 range and swapped a staff and started laying out some pressure. Especially since I believe they actually have a friendly downed coming up here. Yeah, friendly downed right there. That is especially a very pertinent moment to apply pressure as a necromancer, when either your enemy has a downed or when you have a downed, because all the focus of both teams shifts entirely onto that one person that's in the down state, or multiple people that are in the down state. But all the focus of everybody in that arena focuses on that down state, which means nobody's looking at you and nobody's stopping you from doing whatever the hell you want to do. So that is the ideal time to apply pressure, because nobody's looking at you, and you can get away with stupid shit sometimes. Don't do something totally stupid, but you can get away with stupid shit that yields great results. So you should be swapping into that staff and going over there and trying to pressure them. Throw down AoE pressure onto your own down state, and maybe fearing their backline if they're trying to life blast him, because you have the full range to do that at this point. But as you can see, he's not doing that. So that's definitely something I wanted to point out, because I wanted everyone to understand that is your role as a necromancer, is to constantly apply pressure. And if you are not doing that, and if you are positioning yourself in such a way that does not allow you to do that, then you need to check yourself. So as they go forward, he finally moves within range. He throws down some staff marks, but as you can see, his movement's a little cautious. But he really doesn't need to be cautious here, because he is in such a massive advantage at this point. He drops a good well bomb here. He drops it on the downs. Could have been a little faster. I don't know if he was lagging or something. There seemed to be a bit of delay as he was spamming his well keys, but that was a good situation to put down a well bomb is on their enemy down as they were trying to rest him. So that was nice at the end. But I reiterate, aggressive class, play aggressively. Getting into the next round. See, good start. Positioning himself well. Not reacting to the enemy melee very well, though. He should be putting down some more pressure onto them. He drops a well of power for God knows why. It didn't affect anybody. And he certainly didn't need the stun break or the stab. He probably could have used it there, though. But keeps pushing forward. He could have rotated farther to the left and been in a better position, but he keeps focusing on this necro when he really doesn't need to. He needs to focus on the enemy melee and start putting some chill down onto them to screw with their rotations, as I mentioned before. They actually have a downed player from their team now, and another downed, possibly because he is not applying the pressure he is supposed to the enemy melee. Ganking comes second, melee pressure comes first. That is the rule of necros. Your job as a ganker is, at this point in the meta, about 10% compared to what it used to be, which was probably about 30% of what your role was. But he really needs to focus a lot more on the melee, crippling them, debilitating them, and keeping them under pressure. So he pushes in straight ahead, gets a good well bomb there. Someone ends up going down, maybe? But that's one of their own, unfortunately. But that was a good well bomb. He looked to where, I mean, it could have been a little faster, but he recognized where they were settled, where they were committing to, and he dropped a well bomb right there. Here he gets caught because of some faulty positioning. Let's see, so he pushes in, he drops the bomb, he's standing in meteors, he keeps taking damage from the meteors and stepping in circles every now and then. Um, and now he keeps following his melee religiously, which is not good. And now he positions himself right in the middle, just asking to get cleaved out right there. So definitely positioning himself very, very poorly. Since this is happening in this round, I want to point out a topic of what Necromancer positioning should be like. So, in general, Necromancer positioning should be, when in doubt, within 600 range of your melee. That applies to almost any situation. You know, if you are offensive, if your melee, let's say for example, if you're trying to disengage, you want to be within 600 range of your melee. Obviously, of course, you always want to use your melee as a wall. So you don't want to ever extend past your melee, because they are the wall that separates you from the enemy. They soak projectiles that are trying to get to you generally, and they create a wall of red names that other people hopefully can't target you. And if they tried to push past the melee to get to you, the melee would easily be able to turn around, generate it down, and then cleave it out or stomp it. So you have to remember that your melee is your lifeline. So you want to stay about 600 range behind your melee, but no farther than that. If your melee are going to go aggressive, or if your melee are disengaging, you want to still stay behind them, if they're disengaging. But if your melee are going aggressive, you want to be able to predict that, and you want to be able to move forward with them, because at the point where you start to go offensive, that's sort of the 600 rule with staying within range of your own melee. You want to stay within 600 range of your own melee. So that's the 600 rule. The 900 rule is what I refer to with offensive positioning. If your melee is going to go offensive, you scrap the 600 rule and push to where you're within 900 range of the enemy, so that when they are leaping in to land their immobilizes, or however they lock down enemies in a bomb, you want to be ready to hit all of your skills. Wells are within 900 range. Within 600 range of the enemy melee is putting yourself in a dangerous position, especially at the early part of the fight. I covered that in the last round that we watched. But within 900 range is generally where you want to be, because you can lay down any skills that you need to do, and it's a safe position. 1200 range, you're too far to deal any damage, or to adapt or react to how the flow of the fight is changing, how your melee is moving, how the enemy melee is moving. That's the important part of offensive positioning. You have to be able to react and adapt and move with the flow of the fight. If you stay away at 1200 range all the time, you're not going to be able to move. The flow of the fight shifts. Suddenly all your skills are out of range, and you can't actually hit anything. You can't actually apply pressure. So 600 rule, 900 rule. Obviously, these are just standards to begin your understanding of how to position yourself as a necro. As you become better and as you gain more experience, you'll have your own sort of intuition built in about how you should position yourself in multiple given situations. But as a general rule, 600 range of your melee, always behind them, and then when you're going offensive, within 600 range of their melee, and again, you want to position yourself behind your melee. And of course, when in doubt, if your melee is pushing into a really crazy area, if they're pushing right into the enemy spawn and you're not really sure what to do, you can always fall back into sticking around your gank. They will protect you if anyone tries to come after you. They will kill anybody that tries to come after you. If nothing else, you can just be bait for them, so that the enemy gank comes out and then your gank blows them up. So that's the general positioning rule, and he did not follow it here, so he gets stopped. And that's the end of that round. Alright, they're moving around. All these go for the statics as usual. They veil, they push in. He lays down Chillblades, finally! He starts putting down Chillblades onto the enemies. I'm not sure if he actually landed it, but he starts bombing, which is totally useless because their melee were not sitting still, they were not committing. There was definitely a waste of wells there, because they moved right out of them. So not a good prediction there. That is what I would consider poor awareness. Awareness is something you need to be able to react and predict in a GvG scenario. So here he's running around. He uses the X3 to try and peel for himself. It is ineffective. To be honest, he probably should have just dropped a Death Shroud and let himself get downed, so that when his own melee cleaved out that Ellie, he could rally off of it. That's what he should. I think it was an Ellie. That's really what he should have done. And that again is under poor awareness. It's just, it's something that it's something that you just develop over time. That kind of awareness of situation. And I mean, when you go into downstate, you get all your condies cleared, so it's super beneficial to just let that happen instead of just sitting in Death Shroud and waiting for your melee to finish cleaving out of downstate so that they can still not save you. So definitely something he could have done better there, but now they're pushing in. He's not dropping marks on them for some reason. He really should have been rotating around the right side to regroup with his melee and dropping marks. He drops wells on nothing, really. Well, okay, he gets a few good ticks off those wells, but really overall not the best well placement there. He does have weakness for a very long time. He should try and Putrid Mark that off of himself when he sees that many glancing blows. It's pretty bad. He heals for no reason. He starts dropping a little bit of damage. He rotates his camera away from the enemy melee, which is again bad. He gets a good interrupt there. Obviously they have stability downtimes. If they try to go for a regroup, if they try to stomp out that person there, they would get feared away, so that was good on him for doing that. No reason to use 3, not really any reason to use 2 either. They're very, very slow skills, and the number 3 is pretty much useless in all situations because its range is horrendous. He should have just gone for the 1 auto attack and just kept using that over and over and over again, so he missed a prime opportunity there to get that. And in this case, he really needs to focus down these down states. Luckily, the other person in the Lich, I think, finished off that down state. No, someone stomped him, so they managed to rally their ally. So that was good for them. But definitely, he should have been focusing a lot more on trying to finish off those down states to rally his own guy.
All right, so far I've talked about a lot of things, but I think I've neglected covering what I consider to be the 3 main aspects of Necromancer gameplay, and certainly of all classes. You can break it down into positioning, mechanics, and awareness. Through these next 2 people's POVs, I hope to touch on that a little bit more. So the next person whose POV I will be featuring is Jack from BMO, who's probably shit because he's playing on an Asserted Necro. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and pretend that he's not playing with a handicap. Alright, so the round kicks off, and he's remaining decently close to his front line until he strafes for a bit right here and falls just around 600 range, maybe a little bit over. He should be strafing around the right, or not strafing, but rotating around the right side of the static to apply pressure, but he doesn't do that. He goes into the well bomb, but it's not a very well placed well bomb. I assume it was a call out by the driver. A couple people stand in it, but against a top tier guild, you really can't expect that to happen. Obviously, that Tainted Shackles life transfer was very bad. He overextended. He probably should have been dead there. That was definitely a dead zone that he was in. The Lich was not good, and that might have been a call out. I don't know whose it was, but definitely not a good time for a Lich. There's a down there. His positioning's not very good, and his awareness is not very good because he's not focusing down that downed. And he keeps trying to use these useless 2, 3, and 4 skills. I'm not sure if he actually even got a decent auto attack off of anyone during that entire Lich, so that was basically wasted. Let's see what happens next. So they jump in. He's idling so much, just so much here, and doing nothing. At the very least, he could throw down a Reaper's Touch, an Unholy Feast even, because the enemy's momentum should shift to focus on BMO's front line, which means they will be running away from him, so he could get a Cripple off, he could get a Reaper's Touch off, he could even get a Spinal Shivers Touch off, even. And then go for an offensive Tainted Shackles life transfer. He does drop a bomb here. There is weakness on him. You see the glancing blows. He doesn't Putrid Mark that off of himself. And now he goes for the Tainted Shackles life transfer, which was good. It was definitely a good situation to use that as they were on the full retreat. However, he does not stay in range to make it effective. Because the enemy was on full retreat at that point, he even could have dark pathed into them, onto one of their the frontliners on their heels, and then done Tainted Shackles and Life Transfer, and gotten off a lot of damage as they were retreating, with BMO's melee right on their heels. And they could have generated a lot more downs than they're about to, but he didn't do that. And even worse, he full channeled the Life Transfer while he was out of range, instead of just switching over to Life Blasting. So that was also not very good. So they do get some downs up ahead. He gets caught in a static, so that's okay, but he dodge rolls for no reason, and then he just doesn't do anything after that. He really applies no pressure, and the two life blast he manages to get off are reflected by a wall of reflection. He goes into the gank fight for no reason. He really doesn't need to go over there just because there's already plenty of people assisting from his own team. He focuses off their front line for way, way too long with that camera positioning, and he puts himself into a bad spot. He shouldn't have been that far back. He shouldn't have been that far to the right. He should have been on the left side, which was still a safe zone, and he should have been applying more pressure. As you see, BMO actually lost someone there, and that would have been a perfect time for him to drop his Well of Suffering when it came off of cooldown. And his marks, I think he missed like a lot of his marks just because he was standing so far back, and he only casted them onto one or two people. I think his marks are right there on the ground. You can see them inside of that water field. He just completely missed those marks. I think the Putrid procced on like literally one person from the enemy team, and that was it. So definitely very bad positioning there, and obviously not a very good Reaper's mark either, to be honest. Although he had a bad Reaper's mark earlier in the round as well, so not using that cooldown to its full effectiveness. So he starts to go aggressive. He drops his wells. Awful, awful well drop right there, to be honest. They got into their regroup. They just finished it. They were ready to dodge roll out on a moment's notice, and they did. And so you see how those wells were completely wasted. And next he goes into his standard Tainted Shackles Life Transfer rotation. And this would not necessarily be a bad time to do it. I think they have a down from their side. No, it's just his target. But this wouldn't necessarily be a bad time to do it if your melee was in a better position. But as you can see, his melee just almost immediately disengages, and so he's overextended. And at this point, right here, he really needs to just get the hell out of there. And he has put himself into a very, very bad spot by doing that Tainted Shackles Life Transfer. I mean, his front line was just not in a position. I mean, they just lost somebody, and they pushed an enemy regroup, which was completed. And so it's really not a situation where you have the liberty to be offensive or push an advantage, because you don't have an advantage to push here. He needs to get the hell out of there, but he's surrounded by AoE, so what do? He actually chooses the most objectionable answer to that question and tries to push straight towards his front line. He probably should. It's a really tricky situation to say. It's really hard to recover from something like that if you manage to at all. But certainly running straight towards his front line where the AoEs were laid was definitely not a good spot to, not a good decision. He probably should have moved towards his down player right there on the right side in his party, and not tried to res him. Obviously, you don't want to help your friends. Just kidding. You normally do if you can, but he couldn't help him. So he needs to just run past him and try and make it back to the eventual regroup. Since his melee will most likely rotate out to the right, you really need to be able to predict your melee's movement. There's no absolutely zero reason for them to, move into the enemy caster's area to get a regroup. They're going to move back towards their casters. They're going to rotate to the right here towards their spawn to get that regroup. So he really should have tried to, make a beeline and basically sort of cut that corner instead of following his melee religiously. So here he goes straight towards his melee. He walks through AoEs. He's getting hit with life blasts, which really can't be helped, except that he overextended earlier with the Tainted Shackles Life Transfer. And his melee is just getting pushed down. He's going to die. Really not much you can do about that, so that's unfortunate. But yeah, he stood in a dead zone there, and he got completely punished for it. He didn't die as quickly as he probably would have against a better guild, against a top tier guild, but still, as you can see, anyone should be able to punish a positioning mistake that is that bad. Okay, well, getting to the next round now. Moving forward, his positioning is not bad here. staying within a reasonable distance of his front line. He hits the Veil. He drops the Reaper's Mark, which isn't bad, but he doesn't really try to aim it at all, so it's not really good either. It's just sitting over there by itself and, wasting a 40-second cooldown. He drops Putrid on the first engage, which makes no sense to me. People, their front line's just going to regen that really easily. Their warriors are certainly not going to be affected by it with their heal sig. It doesn't really make any sense to drop it there. He positions his camera off their front line, which is really, really bad. He also wasted his Well of Darkness there, I'd like to point that out. But if that front line leaped in on them after they soaked meteor damage there, I mean, they had to stand in meteors just to res one of their guys. His front line would be pushed down and the round would be over, potentially. He also dropped the bomb on as the enemy melee was retreating, and on top of it, he dropped it on a downed Ellie. So just lack of awareness and bad prediction on his part. Maybe it was a call out from somebody else, but certainly not a good time to drop wells. And as a Necromancer, you should know when is a bad time and when is a good time to drop wells. There are times where I will ignore my driver when they call for well drops because I feel like it's not a good situation. The Lich was good, though. They got a downed out of it, maybe two. I mean dead. They got a dead out of it, maybe two. So it was a good Lich. Because they did generate downs prior to that, so it was a good time to drop a Lich. Again, he wasted his Well of Darkness on absolutely nothing. I don't know if it's a prediction thing. I don't know if it's a mechanics thing, but he keeps wasting it, and it's no good. So he drops a Well Bomb here, which is actually a really good Well Bomb for once. That sounded really mean. But he does drop a good Well Bomb here, and he definitely gets quite a few good numbers off of that. He drops it on his own downed, which is an ideal place to place it. Here, he needs to drop Chillblains. Like, he really, really needs to drop Chillblains. He normally doesn't, and he really needed to here, because he would have poisoned the two down states and maybe would have denied that banner. And I don't know why, because I don't know why people aren't using Chillblains. It really confuses the hell out of me, because Chillblains is such an overpowered skill. It chills, and it poisons. And it makes a poison field for weakness blasting, and it's just overpowered. And just half the damage is Putrid Mark, so why wouldn't you use it, really? I mean, there's literally no reason not to. I mean, Mark of Blood is okay for a filler, but there's no reason I would ever prioritize using Mark of Blood over Chillblains. It makes absolutely zero sense. So his positioning there was bad. He soaked way more damage than he needed to. And his positioning after taking all that damage was bad because he isolated himself completely away from his front line. And he should have been close to his front line because his front line should have gone for a regroup. I don't know why they didn't. Maybe they had cooldowns. Maybe they were going for a regroup earlier that was punished, and they just couldn't recover from. I think this is QSS pushing that regroup, but. His positioning, regardless, should have been. Oh wait, it's not. Yeah, it is QSS. So his positioning should have been closer to his front line to get that regroup to recover all that unnecessary damage he took. But other than that, I mean, there's just some obvious, very obvious errors, and it's really hard to say whether it's, I mean, it's a combination of things really, but sometimes it's a little hard to determine whether it's just awareness or mechanics. Because certainly, if you can't predict enemy movement, if you can't sense the flow of the fight, it doesn't matter how good your mechanics are, how good your rotations are, your animation canceling is, but you're not going to do very well because I mean, if you know where to put your spells and your attacks and your damage and your AoEs, but you don't know when to put them, it's still just as bad. You can't have one without the other. If you know when to drop wells, but you don't know where to drop wells, it's just as bad. You can't have one without the other, and that is what the difference between mechanics and awareness has to do with dealing out damage. It's mechanics is knowing where, and awareness is knowing when, and that's pretty much how those two interact. So, all right, so let's jump into the next PvP. I believe this is Gravy from BMO. Sylvari necros, so they're probably pretty fucking good. Just saying, but their positioning at the very least is not good because they're rotating far to the left, putting themselves in a very dangerous position. At this point, they're like 1800 and more range away from their melee, which is very bad, very bad. Not obeying the rule, which they should have applied to their previous gameplay already. Just kidding. But they go for Taint Shackleized Transfer, not advisable. The Necro would have been down sooner if they just life blasted him and then walked away because somebody else is getting the stomp. Because their BMO's entire team is over there making downs, and this guy isn't dropping pressure. He should be dropping blinds to cover the melee, and he should be dropping Well of Suffering to assist those downs. But he's actually not helping with those downs whatsoever, which is bad. It's really bad. He's focusing way too much on applying counter periphery pressure. As I said before, it's about 10% of the Necromancer's job at this point, as opposed to what it used to be, which is like 30%. But still, like, regardless, if you're going for a big push on your team, you should be there to assist them with all of your damage, with all of your coverage, your blind coverage, with all of your poison to deny the enemy's banners. There's so many things you should be doing for your team that this person here was not doing for their team. So definitely, their positioning had errors. Their mechanics weren't bad, but their positioning and their awareness and their I guess target prioritization. I'm not really sure how you. It doesn't really fall into any of the three categories. I don't really think it's something that you need to learn or improve on. It's just something that you need to stop doing, stop ganking so much, right? So that's not good. But you could see how his positioning and awareness made him extremely irrelevant in that fight. And because of his lack of those two key factors of good gameplay, he had no presence. He generated no threat. Or I guess he didn't establish himself as a threat. So as you can see, his mechanics weren't bad necessarily. It was really hard to tell during that, mostly because of the fact that his positioning and awareness made it impossible for him to actually take advantage of any good mechanics he may have had. So it's really important to hone those two just as much as you would hone your mechanics. Very important. And part of good awareness just starts with good camera control and keeping focus on the enemy. Beyond that, prediction is something that you just sort of get used to after a while. Alright, so moving to the next round. First thing I want to point out immediately, which is why I chose this round, is that this guy has no swiftness at the start. Partially because the Guardians didn't throw out simples, partially because he didn't stand in the only simple that he had. So he has no swiftness. He's lagging behind his melee massively right now. A lot of people don't realize it, and I think I'm the only person that's ever had this opinion about Necromancer that I've talked to. I'm going to pause the video here just to talk about this. Swiftness is literally the most important. I don't care what anybody says. Swiftness is the most important boon on a Necromancer, and here's why. What is required of a Necromancer to do everything that it needs to do? To live and to deal damage. Positioning. But how do you position as a Necro? You have to move. You cannot teleport. You cannot blink. You cannot leap. You can do nothing except move. Not having swiftness on your Necros, it doesn't matter how much fury or how much might you have. If they cannot get in a position to actually land their damage when they need to land their damage, all those boons are completely fucking worthless. Swiftness is literally the most important boon a Necromancer can have. I mean, if you have stability, that's fine. But, I mean, a frontline can chase you down. If they have swiftness and you don't, they will chase you down, and as soon as your stability goes away, and stability doesn't even really matter because immobilize is the most OP thing out there, but if they can chase you down and lock you down in an MO because you don't have swiftness, that's terrible. Swiftness is literally the most important boon on a Necromancer, and he doesn't have it here, which is why he's lagging behind so far, which is why he's never in a really solid position to assist. And it's really detrimental to his gameplay, and literally for any Necromancer, not having swiftness is detrimental to their gameplay. It's an important boon for every class, but especially for Necromancer, it is the most important boon. The utterly most important boon. So I'm going to continue playing now, but I just wanted to point that out because I think everyone, everywhere, every class, every guild needs to understand that swiftness is more important than anything else for a Necromancer. So now they're pushing in. He's not dropping Chillblades. Seems all their Necros have a bit of an issue with that. Hopefully they'll fix it after watching this. So it's not something that's too huge. I mean, it's very easily fixed. Just remember to do it more often. He's standing back. He shouldn't have swapped off of staff, to be honest. There's really nothing around him to gank with the axe. There's really, I mean, he could have still spammed one on his staff. There's really no reason to specifically swap to axe unless you're single targeting somebody. Obviously, going with Titanic Shackle's life transfer not advisable right now. Certainly not a situation that he needs to do it. The chill is really fucking him up because his positioning is bad here. But he gets it off of himself with a putrid. I'm not sure if he actually got it off himself, but still, good putrid. Chillblains, good chillblains. So that's what I like to see right there. That's what I like to see. Good use of marks. So he's spamming. He should be spamming the one, but he's dropping a bomb instead, which is not bad. I think that's actually a decent bomb. It could have been a little farther towards his own melee, but other than that, I think his timing on it was pretty good. It's just that his placement of it could have been slightly better. But they do to get it down. He is swapping targets way too much. He needs to focus a single target with his Lich. He doesn't need to be swapping targets so much. He needs to be focusing one down state and cleaving everyone that tries to res that down state. And there he wasn't really doing anything. He should have just dropped it sooner if he wasn't going to actually utilize any of the skills or any of the auto attacks, really, I should say, on his Lich. He doesn't need to be life transferring because there's more DPS to be taken out of Life Blast. That's something that you quickly begin to learn in dueling on a Necromancer, so that's one way you can try to improve, is just sort of dueling. But you learn very quickly the DPS on Life Blast, single target DPS on Life Blast, is much, 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 much greater than Life Transfer. But yeah, that round was a little messy from start to finish. A little bit messy. Alright, I want to feature what I would consider to be one of the high-mid tier guilds. IX, currently, definitely a better guild than we've seen from the other matches from these Necros. I just want to see how this plays out and how this Necromancer deals with the pressure coming out from a guild this good. So they push in, he doesn't drop Chillblains, obviously that needs to happen, the Blind Will obviously needed to happen, and he gets immediately ganked. So you can see how even in a safe position, you can get punished for it. But those banners come down, and that's why I consider it a safe position. As a perfect example why it's a safe position and not a risky or dangerous position, because you can expect a banner at the very least. So now he goes in, he drops a bomb on these guys. He doesn't drop Corruption, which is really, really bad. And you can see exactly why. I want to point this out. So some of you may or may not know, boon conversion into conditions has a priority list from first to last. Stability is one of the later ones, as most people already know. But what some people may or may not know is that the first and second boons are very, very important for what gets converted. First of all, retail. So when you drop Corruption, you can't take retail damage because the boon gets converted before you ever apply damage. So any other AoEs you lay down on top of your Well of Corruption, you will not take retail damage for. That's very important to realize. Second boon that gets converted is Protection, which inadvertently increases your DPS because the enemy doesn't have the extra 33% damage protection from, well, protection. So it's very important that Well of Corruption goes down if you're going to deal damage, and if your frontline is going to deal damage, you have to get rid of that protection. And of course you don't want to take retail damage. So keep that in mind. If you just drop a Well of Suffering on a frontline that's fully buffed and is just mowing you over, and you don't drop Corruption at the same time, you are going to take a lot of damage in retail. A lot. Now, going ahead, he does drop the Blind, but he really kind of wastes it because their frontline had been in the middle of that pocket fight for a long, long time, and they certainly would have regrouped at some point soon, and they weren't really continuing to push. But there would have been a much better time to actually drop the Well of Darkness as his commander goes down, and as IX is just making very quick work of BMO. I think it would really be hard to compete against that, but I think
if they're Necromancers, if BMO's Necromancers had just more pressure, because I noticed, think about it this way.
I noticed that all the Necros have an issue dropping Wells of Darkness and Chillblains onto enemies, and especially predicting their pushes. Just imagine getting Chillblains and Wells of Darkness on enemy pushes, having them poisoned, having them chilled, having them blinded, and maybe even giving them weakness from the blasts. But just imagine how weak their push would be compared to yours, just with that alone. And on top of that, I know there were some issues with coordinated bombs from BMO, from hearing their callouts. So I think once the driver communicates the bombing more effectively, and I think once the Necros are better at identifying useful bombs, or good bomb positions, or just get better at awareness so that they can predict enemy movement more effectively, I think that you'll notice that your damage output is a lot higher. And it's important to keep in mind that this is a 20v20 game mode, or 15v15. It's a team effort. Every class has a job, and when one class isn't performing that job, it puts a lot of pressure on everyone else to perform in the place of where that class, and where that, more specifically, where that player fails to perform. So if you feel like your melee are having to overcommit on downstates, I think your Necros probably just aren't putting out enough pressure on those downstates. When you start to see that, your melee won't have to overcommit as much on those downs to try and secure those kills. And as a result, you will most likely notice yourself living longer and being able to manage your cooldowns more effectively, just because your melee, your Ellies, they don't have to overcommit. And from there, just from that Necromancer improvement, you will notice a ripple effect that makes everything that you do more effective. And so you should notice a massive improvement against guilds that previously you may have struggled against, like IX. So I'm excited to see how your Necros improve as a result of this, and how your guild's performance overall improves as a result of this. And I wish you the best of luck. I know I didn't cover everything I needed to in this video. For people wondering, I didn't really talk about good damage well placement. Another thing I didn't talk about was healing and managing your cooldown, specifically your heal. But I think I'll cover that in the next video after the stability changes roll out. That'll probably be when I do the next Necromancer video. Hopefully I have some more footage for Necromancers at that point. But rest assured, I will be covering more topics as this goes on, because I don't plan to do just one video for each class. There will be multiple videos for different classes, and of course I'm going to have to make new videos for the stability changes for some classes as well. So, but if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will get to them, and yeah, thanks for watching. I hope this is really helpful for all of you. And if any of you were unsure about giving me your footage, I know I was mostly saying negative things, if not entirely saying negative things about the gameplay. But it's completely constructive. I don't mean to imply that I have any level of disrespect for any of the people, anyone's footage. That's just the way I am. It's just really the way I review footage. I mostly just look for mistakes and point them out, and you have to keep in mind that there's really not a lot of time for me to actually review each footage in a lot of depth. In this case, I actually have to talk, and it takes a lot of time to do so. And as you can see in the video, I have to pause often to talk about a point and give it its full, the full amount of consideration that it deserves, and how much everyone should be giving it. So I'm sorry if I miss things. I'm sorry if I only sound really negative. But keep in mind that there's no disrespect, that it is completely constructive criticism, and even if I'm saying bad things now, as long as you apply these changes, you will see improvements.
So once again, thanks for watching, and the next video will be probably a week from now. I think I'm gonna upload every Friday for Reset. I know a lot of people don't play Reset, and a lot of people don't make it into queues on Reset, so they'll need something to waste their time on. And I think this will be something beneficial that they can waste their time on. So, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.